Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of God, Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful. And reckon not those who are killed in Allah's way as dead. Nay, they are alive and are provided sustenance from their Lord, rejoicing in what Allah has given them out of His grace, and they rejoice for the sake of those who, being left behind them, have not yet joined them, that they shall have no fear, nor shall they grieve. They rejoice on account of favor from Allah and His grace, and that Allah will not waste the reward of the believers. As for those who responded to the call of Allah and the Messenger after the wound had befallen them, those among them who do good to others and guard against evil shall have a great reward. Those to whom the people said, "Surely men have gathered against you, therefore fear them." But this increased their faith, and they said, "Allah is sufficient for us, and most excellent is the protector." So they returned with favor from Allah and His grace. No evil touched them, and they followed the pleasure of Allah, and Allah is the Lord of mighty grace. Sadaqallahu al-Aliyyul Azim.
My name is Itrat Sayed, and I will be emceeing the gathering this evening. I'd like to begin first by acknowledging that we are gathered today and that we live in the Lower Mainland on the unceded traditional lands of the Coast Salish people. This is the traditional land of the Musqueam, the Skohomish, the Stolo, and the Tsleil-Waututh First Nations. We acknowledge their claim on their land, and we give our respects and gratitude to them as we gather today in their territories. At this time, I also want to acknowledge that the massacre that happened on Friday was on the traditional Maori territory of Aotearoa. These are very difficult days for our community. We are feeling grief and sadness and anger, but I don't believe that anyone here is shocked. We have seen the rise of the hatred and racism that was at the core of this terrorist attack. And we are gathered here to grieve and to pray, but also to call it out. This was Islamophobia. This was terrorism. This was an act carried out in the name of white supremacy. It was an attack on a particular mosque with particular victims. But this was an attack on all of us who believe in a world without hatred and without fear. This is the world that we together are committed to building across borders and within them. A pluralistic world of multiplicity and diversity that is held together by respect, love, and empathy. A world that recognizes our shared humanity and our absolute equality. This is the vision of the world that this terrorist attacked. And it is that vision that we are here together tonight to weave back into being. And we very much thank you for being here with us. The next thing I'm going to draw your attention to is behind me on the screen. There will be a PowerPoint display that will begin now and will continue throughout our program. This display will have the names and the faces of the fallen who were killed in New Zealand. I'm going to invite Sister Fatima Aziz, who is an executive of Muslim Youth in Motion, to come in now and speak.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum everyone, and peace be upon you all. I send my condolences to the families, the friends, and to the Muslim Ummah for the loss of our brothers and sisters in New Zealand. As Muslims, we are encouraged to be active in our communities, and we are taught at a young age that worship in congregation is amongst the highest of deeds. The terrorist on Friday opened fire at Jum'ah prayer. He used our strength, our worship, and he turned it into our vulnerability. One thing I've learned about vulnerability is that it's not a weakness. Vulnerability is truth, and vulnerability is courage. I say this to myself first and foremost. Don't become desensitized. Don't allow the repetition of these atrocities to numb you. Cry and mourn, and allow yourself to be angry. Most of all, reach out to those around you and to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for solace. I haven't seen the video footage myself, in part because I refuse to become desensitized to this act of terror against my people. However, I've been exposed to portions of the video shared on social media and within my social circles. And a story that resonated with me, and as you saw in the last clip of this slideshow, was a man who greeted the terrorist at the doors of the masjid. His last words, "Come in, brother." To my dear guests tonight, those from different faiths, different backgrounds and ethnicities, I'm sure that you too were greeted in one form or another with hospitality, be it with a smile, a kind gesture, with a soft salamu alaikum or peace be upon you. You see, in Islam, we believe that people are of two kinds. They are either your brothers in faith or your equals in humanity. And this brings me to an important message I'd like to share with you all. The Muslim community is grieving. We are in pain, and what we need now more than ever are unwavering allies. We need people to stand with us shoulder to shoulder, not just at a vigil such as this. We need you to speak up and denounce unequivocally all forms of Islamophobia. We need you to write to news outlets, to publications online, write to editors that consider Muslims newsworthy only when we are perceived as the villain and not the victim. We need you to push back against the double standard in reporting that we've seen in the aftermath of terrorist attacks against Muslims. We need you to pay close attention to the statements released by our politicians in response to these terrorist attacks. If political leaders aren't willing to call this out for what it is, Islamophobia, and if they aren't willing to say that this is in fact a terrorist attack because to them it doesn't fit the mainstream narrative, then they have no place in government. Lastly, we need you to continue to grieve with us. It's day 3 in the aftermath of the terrorist attack, and already I've noticed a shift in what's been trending on social media. People have moved on from commentary about the massacre to border walls and TV shows, and it's time we call out white supremacy for what it is, international terrorism. To my Muslim brothers and sisters, particularly the women and girls in our community that wear hijab in public spaces, I urge you to stay vigilant, to report any and all forms of Islamophobia. Save the Islamophobia Legal Assistant Hotline number on your devices, which will appear within the slideshow. The hotline connects you with individuals who have experienced discrimination with free, confidential legal advice and information. I'll leave you with a verse from the Holy Quran. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Ala bi-dhikrallah tatma'innu al-qulub. Verily, in the remembrance of Allah do the hearts find rest. Wa alaikum as-salam.
Now I'd like to invite Reverend Victor Kim, who's the minister at the Richmond Presbyterian Church and a clerk of the Presbytery of Westminster, to come and speak.
Sheikh Murtaza, to you and to your community, to our Muslim friends and neighbors, let me begin by offering my deepest condolences and sympathies to you. What has happened in New Zealand, in those places of worship, to those who gathered to pray, to practice their faith, is unconscionable and cannot be tolerated in any human society. Xenophobia, Islamophobia, intolerance and fear must be resisted, must be condemned by all people who understand and believe that beneath our skin, beyond our cultural and religious distinctiveness, we all bleed the same color. We are all the same. We who gather here with you this night are committed not only to pray and offer condolences, but also to act, to be engaged, and to work within our communities, our neighborhoods, our cities, and our country to become places where all may gather, pray, and live out their faith in peace, with security, and with confidence. We've heard people, more so over the past few years, who have begun to speak more and more openly about supremacy, about the supremacy of one people over others, about white supremacy, one tradition over others, one skin color at the expense of others. There are those who would seek to foment division to gain power and control. To those who seek such things, we must rise up and say no. No. Not while we have breath, not while we can act, not while our faith is lived out in us. There is only one thing that is supreme, and that is love. The love that comes from the one creator of all living things. And perfect love casts out every fear. Do not fear. It's one of the core messages of my faith tradition, and I think of all of ours together. Do not fear, because the one who is the creator loves us, loves all of us. Do not fear, because fear is rooted in darkness, in scarcity, in finality. But the one who loves us is the light that shines in darkness, the one who comes to give us life and to give it abundantly, the one in whom death is not final, but only a pathway to an eternal hope. Friends, we are angry. We are angry, but we are not afraid. We are not afraid. We will not be coerced into the same sort of divisive politics or rhetoric that seeks to caricature or vilify those who honestly disagree with us, but we will stand against those who seek to manipulate the fear of others for their gain. But more than that, we must make a commitment to work together with you, our Muslim brothers and sisters, with people of every faith and background, to make our communities places of peace and mutuality and understanding, a place where love reigns supreme. Let's not wait for tragedy to unite us. We have to stop meeting like this. Let's not wait for tragedy to unite us. Let's not wait for others to define our agendas. Let's make a commitment as the people of this community, of this city, to proactively work together, to live together, to love together, so that the barriers of blame, ignorance, and fear, hatred, give way to new witness of hope, grace, mercy, and love. Let me offer a prayer as I finish. It's a prayer that calls us to action. It's a prayer written by a Presbyterian minister from the United States. God of our weary years and our silent tears, we're shattered by the deaths of 50 Muslim neighbors in New Zealand. Cut down in the midst of Friday prayers, we are horrified, angry, despairing. We struggle with the knowledge that our prayers alone are not enough. Our silence in the face of intolerance and fear is complicity. Fear that we do not know a way forward that will help. An emptiness. We have been here before too many times, and we know we will walk this bloodied path again. What can we do with such fear and anger and longing that can bind us together, rather than further tear apart the fabric of our common life? We are failing one another, and we are failing you, O Maker of the universe, our mercy, our justice, our peace. We pray for our neighbors in Christchurch and for our whole broken and heartbroken world in this hard season of violence, death, and extremism. Each one lost is a child made in your image. Each survivor is beloved to you. Each afflicted community is part of your commonwealth. We lift our prayers for each life lost, each family bereaved, the worshiping communities whose fabric has been violently torn asunder by bullets and hatred and fear. And we pray for ourselves that this wounding, this outrage will not fade from our minds before our hearts are broken open by your passion for mercy, justice, and love. Make us ceaseless in our resistance to xenophobia, Islamophobia, intolerance, and fear. May the knowledge of your divine image given to every living being warm hearts that have grown cold, and invigorate our desire to embrace our differences and celebrate our belonging in the whole human family. Make the waters of our tears nourish the river that flows through the city of God and the tree of life that is for the healing of the nations. In the name of the God who is one, we pray. Amen.
Thank you so much, Minister. I'd next like to invite Sister Nabila Jaffer, who is a poet, a member of this community, and who's also a soon-to-be social worker.
This poem, it's called Perseverance. We are horrified, devastated, saddened, yet not surprised, confused, not at all. 6, 11, 50, thousands and thousands, Quebec, the synagogue in Pittsburgh, Christchurch, and all around the world have lost their lives in sacred spaces. Racism, fascism, this rhetoric, it's still alive, human dignity basically denied. Everywhere we go, it's propagated. And this is not okay. This is not okay. And from this, we need to realize. We need to realize that we need to sit with this truth. We must endure our discomfort and change it into resilience. We will not internalize this hate, because united we stand, in this solidarity we confide. Together as humans, we will speak out against ignorance. As people of faith, we will never close our sacred spaces. Safety and security will be more like building community. We will create dialogue, communicate, and discuss our vulnerabilities on the merits of human connection and human relation. Inherently, we are all the same. Our hearts bleed the same color, and from this we will learn. We will learn to speak out, learn to become activists and change our fate. And it's okay. It's okay to feel uncomfortable in this time of discomfort. Let's not internalize this hate. With patience and perseverance, we are fearless, because God's on our side, and we will forever stand united with humanity.
Our next speaker, I'd like to invite Rabbi Adam Rubin, who comes to us as the rabbi from Beit Tikva Synagogue and who's also a historian.
Sheikh Murtaza, the dear az-Zahra community, and members of faiths from throughout the Lower Mainland. I'm here as a representative, spiritual leader of Beit Tikva. As you can see, I brought my son Elior. Elior is a student at Richmond Jewish Day School, just practically next door. And it is hard to describe how beautiful, how remarkable the relationship is between the school here at az-Zahra and RJDS. And Elior insisted on coming. I'll call him an unofficial representative of RJDS, so he's by my side. I want to begin by sharing a statement by the Rabbinical Association of Vancouver, consisting of rabbis from the greater Vancouver area across the theological and political spectrum. It's addressed to the the Az-Zahraa Islamic Center, along with the British Columbia Muslim Association and the Ismaili Council of BC. We wish to express our deepest condolences on the loss of the broader members of the Muslim community. At the same time, we wish to condemn this act of violence against both Muslims and against humanity. Such action is repugnant and destructive to people of all faiths. It is an affront to God and to all human values. Unfortunately, purveyors of hate and terrorism have preyed on peaceful houses of worship of late, from the Quebec City Mosque to Charleston Emmanuel AME massacre in South Carolina to the Tree of Life Synagogue shooting in Pittsburgh. We stand together with many other political, religious, and social leaders in affirming the right to peaceful worship, for the right to safely practice religion both in the house of worship and on the street. We wish to comfort the families of the victims and to the Muslim community of New Zealand and to those of the Muslim community who feel the pain of this tragedy across the globe. Our community, the Jewish community, felt great comfort from the visits and well wishes of members of the Muslim community and among many other faith communities after the violence of the Tree of Life Synagogue, and we wish at the very least to return the same sentiment to your community. On a more personal note, I want you to know how horrified I and the many members of the Beth Tikva congregation I serve felt upon hearing the awful news of the events in New Zealand. We stand shoulder to shoulder with our Muslim brothers and sisters against violence and hatred. We are here for you, mi'omek libenu, from the depth of our hearts. Judaism teaches that the shedding of innocent blood is the one sin that can never be tolerated. After Cain kills Abel, the Torah says, "Hark, your brother's blood cries out to me, to God from the earth," expressing in the most heartfelt way the overwhelmingly devastating nature of the murder of innocent life. Building on our Holy Torah's story of the creation of Adam, the first human being, our sages of blessed memory taught, only one human being was originally created in the world, in order to teach that if one destroys one single life, it is considered as though one had destroyed an entire world. And if one sustains one life, it is as though one had sustained an entire world. And in order to create harmony among human beings, so that one cannot say to another, "My father is greater than your father." See how great is God, that he creates each individual in the image of Adam, and yet no two people are exactly alike. Therefore, each person should say, "For my sake was the world created." With the murder of the holy and precious souls in New Zealand, entire worlds were destroyed. But we Jews vow to work with Muslims here in Richmond and with other communities of faith to do everything in our power to value and honor each and every human being we encounter, created in God's image of infinite value. We vow to work with you for the sake of salam, shalom, peace. Thank you.
I'd like to now invite our next speaker, Sister Wala Zaidan, who's also a poet and a student of journalism.
Before the night wept, I heard whispers gleaming through the open door. Hello, brother. A stranger, but in our eyes we are one. A danger that spoke in guns. A language you'll never seem to understand. Oh, hate, we've celebrated hand in hand. We prayed as if there's no tomorrow. Blood on the mat and kneeled in sorrow. The cries have gotten louder and the madness fluently spoke in silence, while my mind stutters daily reminiscing on the good days. I wandered at night in the streets of loneliness, a house of worship, where we built our laughter in mazes, and felt comfortable in our own tears. I wandered at night, in the sea we've sailed, fled the war and settled as strangers, left our hearts back home and learned to live without it. In the darkest hour, 17 minutes of agony, welcomed him with open arms. 73 pages flooded in blood, 1 man charged, 2 mosques attacked, 3 Muqad Ibrahim, youngest victim. And in the darkest hour, it's lonely. Even the moon betrayed its own promise. So we lightened up the candles of humanity with our burning hearts, just to see peace hung where Jesus was crucified. A tame truth and illusion that never seems to be denied. And every time I try to drown my sorrow, it repeatedly gets baptized. Heal them, God. I see nothing but nameless gravestones dug under my tongue. And when I speak their names with scars. In the darkest hour, people stand stronger than terror. In the darkest hour, that's when we stand together, unified, stronger. In the darkest hour, an attack against humanity, we lightened up the world, that the sun shied away. We lightened up the wounds, singing, go, go away. Come into my mosque, and I'll come into your temple. Though we don't worship the same, I just want to live in peace and keep it simple. Thank you.
Now I'd like to invite Sheikh Murtaza Bachu from the Az-Zahraa Islamic Center, who is the resident scholar, the alim, the guide, the religious leader, and the mentor to so many of us.
I'd like to begin with a tradition that we have in the Muslim community, that when somebody passes away, we recite the opening chapter of the Quran for them, Surah Al-Fatiha. And I ask you to join me in reciting the opening chapter in the Arabic language for the souls that passed away, that were martyred in New Zealand. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahmanir Rahim. Maliki Yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. Thank you, friends, colleagues, neighbors, fellow citizens, and members of our community for joining us this evening. The Battle of Uhud was a very difficult battle fought in the early history of Islam. Muslims were defending themselves, and many had fallen. It is narrated that the Prophet of Allah turned to the families and turned to his community, and he told them that God spoke to the souls of those who had been martyred, and he blessed them, and he granted them of his grace. And he asked them if they wanted anything else. And they said, what else can we want after what you have given us? And he asked them if they had wanted to go back to the earth. And they said, only if we are martyred again. And God said, and what else? And they said that we would like you to inform our family and our friends and our community of how much you have graced us after we have been martyred. And so these verses of the Quran were revealed, and the verses that Brother Muhammad Samak translated for you. And God says, وَلَا تَحْسَبَنَّ الَّذِينَ قُتِلُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ أَمْوَاتًا. Never think of those who are slain in the way of God as dead. بَلْ أَحْيَاءٌ عِنْدَ رَبِّهِمْ يُرْزَقُونَ. They are alive, being sustained by their Lord. فَرِحِينَ بِمَا آتَاهُمُ اللَّهُ مِنْ فَضْلِهِ. They are rejoicing of what God has given them of His grace. وَيَسْتَبْشِرُونَ بِالَّذِينَ لَمْ يَلْحَقُوا بِهِمْ مِنْ خَلْفِهِمْ. And they are pleased for those who have not yet joined them. أَلَّا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ. That there is no fear for them, and there is no grief for them. How powerful that is. Those who saw the terror, those who saw those moments of hardships and difficulty, and they look back and they rejoice that there is no fear and there is no grieving. Martyrs have a very special status in Islam. Martyrs are not remembered for their death. Martyrs are remembered for their struggle. Martyrs are remembered for their jihad, the struggle that they put, the lives that they sacrificed. And today I want us to remember those who had fallen, not because they had fallen, but because they had struggled and they had chosen to sacrifice their lives. I call upon you to read their stories that are now emerging in the news. That there was a brother at the second mosque, and he looked at the shooter who came in. And this brother had 4 of his children with him. But not for a moment did he hesitate. And he waited until the shooter had to reload. And then without a moment of fear, he attacked. And he pushed him away and made him run out of the second mosque. And if it wasn't for the risk that he took, for the selflessness that he showed, many more lives would have been lost today or on that day. There were sisters, as you read, who chose to put their lives on the line, and they sacrificed their lives to protect the lives of others. Such are the stories of these martyrs. And today we are inspired by their strength. And we speak today of their strength. For this is not a moment of weakness for us. It is a moment of sadness, yes, but it is a moment that demonstrates the spirit, the soul, the courage, and the confidence of a believer. This is a moment of strength for us. And that's how I hope we will move forward. With strength, with patience, and with perseverance. But I also ask my community today to reflect upon Islamophobia and to recognize that they were targeted because they were Muslims and because they practiced Islam and because they went to a mosque and they went to a masjid. And that the goal of Islamophobia is not only to kill Muslims or to hurt them, but that the goal of Islamophobia is to make us fear being Muslims, fear practicing Islam, fear not being proud of who we are. And so today, as a Muslim community, and this day forward, we must express that we are Muslims. We are proud Muslims. We will practice this faith that we cherish so much. We will practice it in public. We will continue to come to this mosque that is not only a place of prayer for us, it is our home to us. It is where we come to learn. It is where we come to be with the community. It is where we come to celebrate. And it is where we come to commemorate. And we are proud today as Muslims. I also want us to reflect upon the roots and the causes of this incident. It is not just about gun control. It is not right to make it about mental illness. The gun was shot on Friday. The trigger was pulled years before then. We must seek to understand the ideologies, the hatred, the bigotry that led to what happened on Friday. And it starts with simple statements made sometimes by political leaders, where they cast Islam and they say that the greatest threat is Islamicism, where they say that we will find wherever the terrorists are, even if they are in their mosques. And the narratives that they push about the Muslim community, where the Muslim community is cast as the fifth column, that's where it begins. That is what encourages and emboldens the right-wing extremists that we see growing and festering today. And then sometimes we may have the same political leaders come to us and offer sympathy and condolences in such moments of tragedy and hardship. And I say very clearly today, we need not sympathy, and we need not any condolences. But we need them to realize the potency and the power of their words. That they may not have put the gun in the hand of the killer, but they certainly gave him the license to kill in his mind. And we must confront that. We have remained silent for too long. We have been afraid sometimes for too long. And this has to change. We must confront media narratives that cast Muslims in a negative light. That when the perpetrator is a Muslim, the word terrorist is used in less than an hour. And when not, then the word terrorist is not used at all. And we must stand up against that. And I wish I could say that us gathering today is going to solve all of that. But it is not. It is the first step to it. But we must work together in confronting this hatred, in confronting this bigotry, in confronting this racism, in confronting Islamophobia, and in confronting xenophobia. Let us take strength and confidence from the souls that were fallen and martyred in New Zealand, that just as they confronted the killer who entered their places of worship, that we make a commitment today that we are also going to confront the people who gave the ideology to that killer to carry out what he carried out on Friday. I pray to God that He strengthens us and He helps us and He gives us the courage and the wisdom to do exactly that. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
So we do have some time now for open mic, and we previously had a request, and I'd like to invite Balwant Sangera from the neighboring Gurdwara to come forward now and speak at the open mic first.
I'd like to thank you all for coming tonight. We are from next door, India Cultural Center of Canada, the Sikh Temple. Today with me is our President, Mr. Balveer Javanda, our General Secretary, Mr. Chan Singh Bhatt, our priests, and some members of the congregation. Also, I'm glad to see some members from the Highway to Heaven, from number 5 road along number 5 road. You know, we are deeply disturbed by this tragedy. It is an act of terrorism. There's no denial to that. And I was very impressed with some of the speeches that have been made. And we stand with you. Today we stand with the Muslim community, with our brothers and sisters, not only from the az-Zahraa, but all around the country and the world. I think we need to stand together so that we can beat these kind of misconceptions and take charge rather than let these people with twisted minds to do such a damage. It's, you know, when you look at the the victims from 3 years to 71 years, it really breaks your heart. And I don't want to say too much, but I can assure you that we are with you, we stand with you, and we condemn this senseless act of terrorism. There's no denial to that. So again, thank you for giving me the time, and we are always, one thing I'd like to share with you, I was very impressed with some of the speeches. Guru Nanak, the founder of Sikhism, he said something very unique. Ek pita, ek iske hum barik, that we are children of one God. In that context, we all have something very close connection with each other, and we must respect each other because all of us are members of this human race.
Salam alaikum. Shalom al kulchem. I'm Jewish. My name is Ophira. I want you to know I'm with you here because it's so important for me to say we are just humans, all of us, the same. And I visited Pittsburgh because I used to live in Pittsburgh after the massacre there. And my heart was broken, mainly from the reaction of the Muslim community in Pittsburgh. The support and the love and the courage of the Muslims in Pittsburgh, this is what gave me hope. And when I heard about this, I was broken for 2 days. And people keep seeing me in the street and ask, Ophira, are you okay? I said, no, I'm not okay. But they say, the sun is shining. I say, yes, but too many people are killed for nothing. So I want you to know that many people that grew up Jewish and in Israel with lots of hate are with you today. Shalom.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. My name is Tariq Azim and I am an imam for Ahmadiyya Muslim community. As a Muslim, I thank the sister that has just shared her remarks, and I wish that we all have that heart like her, that we feel the pain of anything evil when it takes place in any part of the world. So I thank her very much for her remarks, and I would also like to share a few comments with you. Whenever I get a chance to travel to any part of the world, I make it my duty, I consider it an honor to go to the local mosque and pray over there. When I was reading the incidents or these background stories of some of these brothers and sisters that have lost their lives in Christchurch attack, it was surprising to see that some people had just been there by chance. They were visiting for work and they were probably heading back after. A sheikh that had just joined the community a few weeks ago, and he was destined to be there that day, and he passed away. The Holy Quran says, وَمَا تَدْرِي نَفْسٌ, that a soul does not know بِأَيِّ أَرْضٍ تَمُوتُ, that in which land it will pass away. We should remember, we should always feel the pain of anyone that is lost in this manner, and we should remember that it could have been as any one of us, and we should be crying for their pain or their demise, just like as we would have cried for our own real sibling, real mother, real father, real family member, because we are all of humanity, one large family. In conclusion, I would like to share with you the remarks of the world head of Ahmadiyya Muslim community, who said what he said at this incident, after this incident. Speaking from London, His Holiness Mirza Masroor Ahmad said, on behalf of the Ahmadiyya Muslim community worldwide, I express my deepest sympathies and condolences to all those affected by the barbaric terrorist act that has taken place in Christchurch. Such heinous and utterly inhumane attacks must be condemned in the strongest possible terms. It is a grave tragedy that dozens of innocent Muslims have lost their lives while joining for worship. All people, no matter their faith or belief, have the right to worship peacefully. This tragic event should serve as a lesson and warning to other countries of the developed world that we must join together to tackle all forms of racial, ethnic, and religious hatred with wisdom and with a firm hand. Our heartfelt prayers are with the victims of these attacks and all those who have been affected. May the perpetrators of this evil act be promptly brought to justice. May God grant us that heart that cries in pain for any lost soul, anyone that is killed in this inhumane manner. May God give us those hearts. Amen. Thank you so much.
My name is Maxine. I'm also Jewish. I was asked to say a couple of words on behalf of Independent Jewish Voices, Vancouver, to express our condolences and our pledge of solidarity. And also, I would want, of course, to condemn the terrible, senseless murder. As a Jew, I'm familiar with this kind of thing. Our people have suffered this kind of thing over the centuries as well, and many of us, I think, feel united with you in your outrage and your determination to continue as proud, in your case, Muslims, to not let yourselves be intimidated, and we're here for you too. Thank you.
Just representing the Baha'i community of Richmond and as members of the Highway to Heaven Association, so thankful we have something called Highway to Heaven where people of every faith can be together and recognize and appreciate and respect each other's beliefs and oneness. And I just want to express on behalf of our community our heartfelt condolences and our oneness, that we are one human family and that we're like the flowers of one garden. And the beauty of a garden rests in the fact that there are differences, and the differences of each flower enhances the beauty of it all. And I just want to say that light, you cannot turn darkness into in a light room. The light illumines the darkness. We can turn on the light, but this room that is filled with light and love, you cannot turn on the darkness. So let us be the light. Baha'u'llah said, so powerful is the light of unity that it can illuminate the whole earth. I just pray that each one of us can be that light and shine that light in places where there is darkness, but the dark cannot and will not enter where there is light. Let us be that light, and we're with you. Our hearts are with you, and they are broken. So anyway, thank you.
So on behalf of all of the organizers of tonight, I would like to deeply, deeply thank you all for coming to share our grief and to be with us in this moment, and for your solidarity and for your empathy and for your strength. We are very, very grateful that you come here to share this with us tonight. There will be volunteers coming in now to circulate refreshments. As I said before, we will be gathering for prayer, and you're welcome to stay with us. And you're also welcome to stay for the vigil afterwards, the candlelight vigil afterwards outside. I'd also, just before I end, draw your attention to the display in the neighboring hall. The prayer mats with roses on them and the names of the fallen Muslims are there as a way for us to visualize what's happened. Thank you again so much for coming. Assalamu alaikum. May peace be with you all.